Okay, it's 3:01, so as promised, we'll get going. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ken DeSessa from Revelwood. I want to thank you for joining me today. I have with me Adam Riskin from Revelwood. He will be doing the demonstration portion today. And I also have with me Stephanie DeJoseph. She's the corporate accounting manager at Parts Authority, and we're going to be doing a little bit of Q&A with her today. So as we get going, just want to run through a few quick slides first. That won't take but a minute or two. Then we're going to get into the conversation with Stephanie, and we're going to end up with the demonstration by Adam. I would ask that afterwards, we're going to be reaching out to folks that attended the webinar for maybe a quick 15-minute conversation. So you'll get an email from myself or someone else in Revelwood, and I hope maybe you choose to spend just a few minutes with us to explore BlackLine a little bit more, answer any questions you might have, etc. But you'll get that sometime after the webinar. There is a Q&A button. You'll see it on your screen. If you do have a question, submit it. We move pretty fast, and we have a little bit of time. We try to go through things pretty quickly. If we can get to your question, we will. If we can't, we'll make sure we get an answer to you via email. All right, so let's hit the ground here. A quick 30 seconds on Revelwood. So we've been in the business of software within the finance and accounting world for over 25 years. I think it's actually 27 now. There's just a few pieces of software that we deal with. IBM and Workday are actually budget planning and forecasting software. Fluence is a consolidation software. And of course, what we're here to talk about today, BlackLine, which automates the financial close process. Okay. The reason that BlackLine even exists and is good doing as well as it is in the financial close project is really because of these statistics that you see on the screen right here. Now, these statistics come from Hackett Group, Robert Half, and CFO.com. 65% of people they've interviewed say that the manual effort of the financial close process is the number one bottleneck in their whole process. So the manual effort usually revolves around the fact of using Excel, importing data, etc. 55% of the people that they interviewed are not really confident that they actually get the result they want without having financial errors, and they're not comfortable with the reporting they're having to do at the end of the month. And especially if you're a public company, that could be significant. The bottom performers of the financial close process spend on average 350% more on the actual close process itself. So if you're not using automation and you consider yourself not maybe very good at the financial close process, odds are you're spending a significant amount of money doing it. And then the last one I always think is kind of interesting. There's actually a morale component to the whole financial close process. Productivity is lost from your workers because they're really not actively engaged in the process. They don't find it maybe meaningful work. It's something they know they have to do, but maybe not necessarily something they want to do all the time. So I thought those were kind of interesting. Now, if you think about your process, the whole thing about BlackLine is to automate that and make sense of what might be a chaotic process for you. And the key thing here to remember is it's not just about the tasks that make up the process. There's a lot of activity that goes on in between those steps of the process, things like emails and phone calls and meetings. And if you look at it holistically, what BlackLine really does is bring you a lot of automation to the entire process. And wrapping up my slides, will be done here after this one. I just want to give you an idea of really how prevalent BlackLine is in the marketplace. They now have over 4,200 customers. There's a very high percentage of the Fortune, let's call it 100, that are using BlackLine, but there are also a ton of smaller to small mid-market type of organizations using BlackLine as well. Over 300,000 users of the system, and they've been recognized, if you're familiar with the Gartner Magic Quadrant at all, for the past 4 years have been in the leader quadrant, okay? So that's really all I wanted to cover today. And let's move on to our Q&A portion. So right now I want to introduce Stephanie DeJoseph. She's the corporate accounting manager with Parts Authority. She's been a Revelwood customer now since early part of this year and has actually used Revelwood at a prior organization herself. So Stephanie, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks, Ken.
So why don't we just start out with some general introductions about yourself and tell us a little bit about Parts Authority.
Sure. As you said, I'm the corporate accounting manager at Parts Authority. We have about 18 people on the accounting team. We're a distribution company and we have about $2 billion in revenue a year. I've been here for slightly over a year now. When I first started, we had very manual processes, but we were growing rapidly over the last 4 years, which I think is kind of why things, became so hard to manage. So we were definitely looking into making it less manual.
Excellent. So you were managing, you talk about manual. I'm assuming you were managing the financial close process in Excel and then decided to automate, correct?
Correct.
So were there any sort of specific things that happened that caused you to really start to look into and move forward with close automation?
Yeah, there was quite a few. A big one was we have a bank rec that is very manual and time consuming. We're doing a three-way match. It took us 1 to 2 months to do that one bank reconciliation. So we're looking to save time there. Also the checklist, our monthly checklist was in Excel, which was really hard to manage when you have 18 people going in and out of it. People would forget to sign off. And the same thing with our reconciliations. We didn't really have a process in place to make sure that, all 200 recs were signed off and approved. We're also trying to be SOX compliant. So that was a big reason for wanting to be in BlackLine.
Now, you'd mentioned to me when we were first talking about BlackLine, the idea of materials and sort of documentation around the close process. Was that part of your decision about trying to automate?
Yeah, so currently, before we had BlackLine, we had our support kind of scattered in different folders. It was very hard to follow and find things. So now with our reconciliations and even our checklist, we have all of our documentation in one place, and we're able to just go there and know that that's our final version.
Sure, sure. And Adam, by the way, is going to show a little bit about that as he goes through the demonstration. And the last thing I recall in our prior conversations is that you were having issues with journal entries being posted after a rec was completed and kind of not figuring that out and that taking a lot of time.
Correct. So we didn't really have a way to let people know, and people would forget to mention if they posted a late journal entry. So we'd go into the following month and realize that a lot of our recs were missing entries because late entries were posted and was not communicated. So now that, going with BlackLine and how it updates automatically more than once a day, we get notifications anytime our balance changes, which makes it really easy to make sure we're not missing anything.
Yeah, that's a key part of the system that a lot of people, not just you, tend to really appreciate. So tell the folks on the webinar about your experience, sort of the evaluation process, going through that, et cetera.
So I had used BlackLine at my past job. I found it very user friendly, easy to use. A big part of BlackLine too was the pricing. We did look at a few other competitors, but by far the pricing for BlackLine was a lot less. And the implementation with Revelwood was a big part. We had spoken with you guys, and just the ease and the support that you provided made it an easy, answer for us.
Yeah, I like having 2 and 3 time users of BlackLine. They help in the sales process. So it's great that you came back again. We really appreciate that. So what were your sort of initial implementation strategies and goals?
So we started off with the tasks, as that was a little bit easier. We already had a manual checklist in Excel. So we were able to go live with that the first month. And then we went on to the account reconciliations, and some of the easier bank recs that there wasn't too much complicated transactions or three-way matching, and we were able to get all those implemented in the second month. Now we're working on our more complicated bank rec that has the three-way matching. You know, we definitely found that we were well educated when we came out of everything with BlackLine, that we're able to do everything on our own, and not really rely on having to ask that many questions. So I feel, you know, we definitely got to a point where we now are running everything ourselves and feel confident.
Excellent. So early on, you had mentioned a difficult bank rec, and I think that's a great one to talk a little bit more about, because it's not everyone, you know, maybe has that level of difficulty. They might have it, not realize that you can actually do these types of things in BlackLine. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that bank rec?
Yeah, so we honestly didn't think BlackLine would be able to help us either, and we were so happy when we had the conversation and talked about it. So we do a three-way match with one of our bank recs, and the AR subledger is not in our ERP system, which makes it very manual, very time-consuming. And for a $2 billion company, we have a lot of transactions that are flowing through that account. So we were manually matching. So now we're working on matching the AR subledger to the bank statement to all the journal entries within BlackLine.
Excellent. So just for people on the webinar to understand that, we use a matching engine within BlackLine to do bank recs, but that matching engine could be applied to really any data that you want to match against, and it can match up to 3 files together. And so there's many use cases, everything from sales use cases to inventory use cases, that might benefit you by using that matching engine. It's not just for bank recs. So final question, then we're going to move on to Adam and his real life demo. So you've been using the system now for about 4 months, maybe a little over 4 months. How have you actually found the benefit to the company, the department?
So on your first slide, I think they nailed one of them, was very important to us, was the confidence that we didn't have any errors and we weren't missing anything in the close. We had a very hard time knowing if we were final closed. The manual checklist was never fully finished. Now we have visibility into what everybody is doing. Anyone can go on the dashboard and see where we are with the close. We're confident that we're getting all of our entries in, all of our reconciliations that need to get done before close are completed. It also helped us shift work around. We were able to more visibly see the workload for each person and to see who maybe had more work than somebody else, that we could shift things around. And another big thing was time. It saved me a lot of time. I was probably spending over an hour to 2 hours a day trying to manage all of this in Excel, where I maybe spend 10, 15 minutes just, you know, looking at what people have open. It makes it very visible. We probably took a day off a close from the organization, allowing us more time to review. So it's definitely a big time saver.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All righty. Well, that wraps up our Q&A with Stephanie, and we really appreciate you doing this with us. We'll send you a parting gift in some way, shape, or fashion.
Thanks,
So,
Ken.
just like the Price is Right. And I know you've got to go, and so that's okay. You hop off, and we'll move on with our webinar. And thank you very much again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken, for having me.
All right, Stephanie. Thank you. All right,
Bye.
Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you to move on with the rest of our demonstration. And please, folks, remember there's a Q&A button. If you have any questions, go ahead and type something in, and we'll try to get to it.
So we wanted to just start off here giving a quick overview of the different software modules that BlackLine offers. And those are the 8 circles that you're seeing here on the screen. But what Stephanie and Ken talked about before, and I'm going to talk in more detail in a little bit, are the three most commonly used BlackLine software modules. The first one is the balance sheet reconciliation module, and it has a ton of features that can save you time and reduce errors when doing your balance sheet reconciliations. So you'll hear me talk a little bit about auto certification rules. And these rules allow the system to complete recs for you, eliminating the need for your team to spend any time completing those recs. And on average, BlackLine sees their customers have 60% of reconciliations automated via these auto certification rules. The second module I'll talk about in a little bit is the transaction matching module. And this module can automatically match transactions from one file against another. The most common use case is to automate bank reconciliations. And again, that was something that Kenny and Stephanie talked about earlier. And the system does this by creating match rules within the system, and that allows it to do all the work of matching your journal entries to bank transactions. And most of our customers see the system matching over 90% of the bank transactions for them. And the last module I'll talk about is the task management module. And this is the module that helps track month-end close tasks. So everyone on your team knows exactly what they're responsible for completing, and management can quickly see which tasks are completed and which aren't at any point in the close. Okay. All right, so let's do a deeper dive into the modules here. The first one I'll cover is the account reconciliation module. And again, this is the module to help out with your balance sheet recs. Now, one of the great things about it is how much time it saves you each month. For a lot of customers, before they implemented the system, they spent 1 to 2 weeks reconciling accounts. And that's with more than one accountant. And the main reason the reconciliations took so much time was because it was manual and in Excel. But after they implemented BlackLine, many customers reduced their time spent on reconciliations. It also provides many controls to make sure GL balances are correct, recs are completed and contain all supporting items, and that recs are also completed on time. So let's take a look at how they work. Now, this will be a high-level overview of how the account recs work within BlackLine. Each account is going to be assigned a reconciliation template to store your supporting items. So, for example, if you're reconciling a prepaid account, you can pick an amortization template. You only have to enter those items one time, and the system's going to roll that schedule forward for you each month. For reconciling a bonus accrual account, you can use an accrual schedule template and set up your accrual schedule for the year. For your bank recs, you can use a template that shows your ending bank balance, outstanding check in transit, and this gives you that nice final bank to book report view. And there's many other reconciliation templates the system offers. Out of the box, there are 12, but you can create many more if you like. Now, to help you complete your reconciliations each month, the system automatically imports some key information. So for example, your trial balance automatically imports and populates GL balances on your recs. And you can schedule the import to occur as often as you wish. This ensures the GL balances on your recs are always correct. Now, we like to say that BlackLine is ERP agnostic, and it can integrate with any GL system. All we need is a trial balance file, which all GL systems can create. It also easily integrates with multiple GL systems if that's what your organization has. You'll be able to enter supporting items and attach documents to your recs. Oh, sorry, we're back on this one here. So you'll be able to enter supporting items and attach documents to your recs. Now, these can be entered directly by the preparer or automatically uploaded from the subsystem. Common example here is to feed a list of sales and payable invoices into the system. The system will auto-populate the accounts payable and accounts receivable recs with those details. So it minimizes the time spent to complete the rec and ensures it's always accurate. Now, after the supporting items and GL balances are fed into the rec, then BlackLine tries to complete it by using its auto certification rules. So that's right, the system can complete that rec for you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Now, for the recs that can't be auto-certified, there's a workflow assigned of who should prepare, approve, and review it. And the system has all kinds of tools to help with that process. Now, these are the auto-certification rules I talked about on the last slide. The system looks at the GL balance and supporting items, and if criteria is met, can mark that rec as complete. So one very common rule is the amortization schedule rule. When you create an amortization schedule in a reconciliation, the system rolls forward that schedule each month. So when the next month comes along and the GL balances are imported, if the GL balance matches up to the amortization schedule balance, the system can mark that rec as complete. Another common rule is the GL balance is zero rule. So if an account has a GL balance of zero and no journal entries were posted to it in the month, the system can recognize it and mark that rec as complete. Another common rule is the GL balance is unchanged from the prior month. So this is a huge time saver for many customers. It eliminates time spent reconciling low-risk accounts. And on average, BlackLine's customers see 60% of their account reconciliations completed by the system using these auto-certification rules. But essentially what you would see here is, a full amortization schedule that you typically would see within Excel, where you would have your prepaid items going down the list, going down the left-hand side, and then on the top going from left to right, where you would see the different months, and your schedule would be filled out with all with the amounts of your prepaid items on there. So I kind of gave you a visual look of how it looked within BlackLine, but essentially it looks, almost identical to how you would see it in Excel. So I thought it's usually a good visual for people to see that's new to BlackLine. Okay. So we're going to jump now to the second module, that we wanted to cover within BlackLine, and that's the transaction matching module. And again, when we're talking about transaction matching, we're talking about matching records from one data source to another. And the most common example, again, like we talked about before, is a bank reconciliation. Essentially, right, how most folks are doing bank reconciliations today is they're taking their data, their bank transactions and dumping them to Excel, and they're taking their journal entries and dumping them to Excel as well. And so the left-hand side of the screen here is supposed to represent your bank transactions in Excel, and the right side is supposed to represent the journal entries dumped out to Excel. And, again, how most folks do it is they're typically looking for, a check with a check number of a certain amount on their bank statement, and they're typically manually matching it over to that same transactions within their journal entries. And it's just a very manual process that they're going through. Okay. Here's a high-level overview of how the transaction matching module works within BlackLine. So on a scheduled basis, the GL system creates a journal entry extract file, and the bank creates a file with your bank transactions. Both of them get imported into BlackLine, and this can be done on a scheduled basis. So some companies actually do it daily, so issues are recognized immediately. And also the work is typically completed by the time the month-end process comes around. Now, when the journal entry transactions and the bank transactions come into BlackLine, BlackLine's going to run it through its transaction matching engine. And this is where the magic happens. BlackLine is actually going to match your journal entries to your bank transactions for you. And the matching capabilities are really advanced. It can match using any data fields within your files. So we could even match multiple journal entries to multiple bank transactions. And with those advanced matching capabilities, most customers see the system match over 90% of their transactions for them. Now, transactions that the system successfully match go into a match bucket. You don't need to spend any time looking at them, but they're there for audit purposes. For the transactions left over, the system has all kinds of features to help you match them and mark them as outstanding items on your final bank to book report. So just try to picture it. the system's going to match over 90% of your transactions. Your team only has to spend time on the remaining 10%. So you'll spend less time completing the bank rec and have more time to analyze exceptions. Now, to see the transaction matching module, I do have a demonstration video. What you see on the screen now are transactions for an operating account reconciliation. And these have been preloaded into the system. It includes both depository and disbursement transactions. The left side shows the bank transactions, and the right side shows the journal entries. Now, the loading of these transactions can be fully automated, where the system automatically imports on a scheduled basis. And it can be as frequent as several times a day if you want. No human steps are required. Now, let's look at the logic needed to reconcile this account. We have some AP checks here, where if the check number and the amount are the same, the transactions match. We have some deposits here, where if the amount, date, BAI code, and document type are the same, the transactions are matched. We have the total amount of multiple ACH journal entries matched to one withdrawal on the bank statement. We have the total amount of multiple ZBA bank credits matched to the total amount of multiple journal entries. And maybe the most impressive feature, the system can look for any combination of bank transactions that sum up to the same amount as a journal entry. Now, all this logic that we just saw, it can be set up in the system. So the system can automate and do all this matching work for you. BlackLine calls these pass rules. You can create as many as you want. You can utilize all the fields in your bank and journal entry files in your matching logic, and they're really easy to set up. So let's take a look at some of those pass rules. Here's those 5 pass rules set up in the system. Let's take a look at the pass rule to match our AP checks. First, I tell the system which records are AP checks. On my bank side, BAI code 475 represents a check. And if you're not using BAI codes or aren't familiar with them, there are other ways to flag a transaction as an AP check. On my journal entry side, it's an entry with a document type of PMCHK. Then I tell the system that the amounts and the check numbers of the bank and journal entries need to be the same to mark them as a match. And it's really as simple as that. So now that we've seen an overview of the setup, let's actually run these pass rules and see this automation in action. I'm putting these screens side by side to help here. The right screen contains all my bank and journal entry transactions for the month. I have 212 bank transactions and 237 journal entries, about 500 in total. Keep those numbers in the back of your head for a minute. Now, I'll click the button that reconciles these transactions using the 5 pass rules. Note that although you see me clicking buttons for each step, these steps can be automated. I'm just manually doing it that way for this demo because it helps people understand how the system works. So the system has finished reconciling these transactions. So after refreshing the screen, notice how most of the records are gone. That's because the system just matched them. The only remaining transactions are the exceptions. So picture this in your current world. The system is scheduled to do this work daily, weekly, or monthly, but it runs at night, and it matches 90 to 95% of your transactions. Your team comes into work in the morning, opens the system, and comes to this screen. And they only need to research these remaining exceptions. Picture the time saved with this approach. Now your team can spend more time on researching the exceptions instead of just finding them, or have more time to spend on other projects and initiatives. Picture the ability to identify discrepancies immediately instead of waiting till month end, or completing your recs before the close instead of after. The benefits are endless. Also, note that I'm using a small number of transactions in this demo because it makes it easier to follow, but the system can easily handle hundreds of thousands of records if that's what you have. Now, here's how to handle the remaining exceptions. In this example, we have these two deposits the system didn't match. It's because my bank transactions had a date of June 5th, but the associated journal entry date was June 25th. I told my pass rules to ignore them because the dates were so far apart. But that's okay, because I can match them from this screen. I click on my two bank transactions and two journal entries. Now, check out this section of the screen. It's my helper. It's showing that the two bank items I clicked totaled $17,500, and the two journal entries I clicked were also $17,500. And the difference here is obviously 0. This helps me to know that the exceptions I'm matching in the screen are the same amounts. The last step is to click the match button. And now those transactions are gone from the screen because they're matched. All that's left are these remaining checks in my journal entry transactions. These are outstanding checks that haven't cleared the bank yet. Here's the steps to mark them as outstanding at the end of the month. I click on all the checks. Come over here and click the Create Item button. So I mark these as outstanding items. So all that's left to do is go and review my final bank to book report. So here's my final report. At the very top, you can see a full audit trail of your bank and journal entry transaction matches. If I click on the automatic link, this shows me all the transactions the system's matched for me. For example, if I click on this match right here for my ZBA credits, I could see on the top the 5 bank transactions that match to the 2 journal entries on the bottom. And the sum of both totaled $350,000. The bank balance is automatically populated for you when you load the bank files. So you don't need to spend time keying them in, and you know they're always accurate. These are the supporting items we just flagged a few minutes ago. Here's the GL balance. This gets imported directly from your general ledger system, so you don't need to key in those amounts either. The unidentified difference, this is my bank balance, less outstanding checks, less GL balance. 0 means that my report is in balance. And notice these 2 sections down here. I have a comment section where I can enter any specific comments about this reconciliation. And in this section, I can attach any documents, like a copy of my bank statement. And the beauty of this is that all the information about your reconciliation is here in one single screen that everyone knows how to access. No need to search through a file share to find the different documents anymore. Also, all your bank recs, no matter which user prepares them, is always in this standardized format. It's much easier for managers to review, and you can just give your auditors access to your system instead of spending time emailing them a ton of documents. Now, do keep in mind that although this module is commonly used for bank reconciliations, it can automate any scenario where you're matching records from multiple files. Note all the other listed examples of how the transaction matching module can be used. And it can actually match records from up to 3 data sources. So you can use it to reconcile your journal entries to a subledger, or purchase orders to inventory received, or even a 3-way match between your credit card statements, bank statements, and journal entries. And again, the example that Stephanie talked about before is where they were matching payments received within their AR module to the bank transactions to the journal entries. Okay, so they were doing a nice 3-way match within the system. So essentially, if you're spending significant time each month matching transactions in Excel, BlackLine's going to save you all that time by doing the majority of work for you. Okay, so the third module that we're going to talk about today is the task management module. Now, most companies use it to track their month-end close tasks. Now, most companies track those close tasks in Excel today. They'll have a list of tasks, who's responsible for completing them, and date they're due in an Excel file. And the challenge with that is that anyone can make changes to the file. Users can enter incorrect completion dates, and there's no real notification if a task becomes overdue. The task management module has all kinds of features to help you manage those closed tasks. A couple of them are listed here on the screen. Some of the big ones are that, for one, you get an audit trail of when tasks are signed off. So you know exactly when the task was completed and approved and by who. The system has email alerts that it sends out. And this can be for tasks that are overdue or tasks waiting on approval. So everyone gets that proactive notification when a problem is close to occurring. The system also has management reports and dashboards to quickly see which tasks are complete and which are outstanding at any point in the month. So you don't have to spend any time asking your team for updates on their closed tasks, and they won't have to spend any time giving them. And you'll feel more confident that closed tasks are being performed properly and on time. And when they aren't, you'll know immediately. Essentially, what we're going to show up here is what the tasks, a screenshot of what the tasks look like within BlackLine. You know, think of a grid where you'll see a list of all the tasks that your team's responsible for completing, who the account is responsible for completing each task, what the due date is. Those due dates can be set by business day, what the status is of all those tasks. And you're always able to see an audit trail if it's been signed off, when it's actually been marked as complete on there. Okay, so this was the abridged version of the webinar. We're finishing up here now. We will be reaching out to everyone for a 15-minute introduction call. We do hope you could have that conversation with us. Feel free to either reach out to us at info@revelwood.com, or when we reach out for that 15-minute intro call, please accept, and we'll be happy to talk to you, answer any additional questions you have about the software. Thanks so much.